Project Addiction, the complete guide to using, abusing, and recovering from drugs and behaviors. Chapter 9, Legalization. If everybody minded their own business, the world would go around a great deal faster than it does. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. My own view is that drugs and alcohol should be legal, but highly, smartly, and strictly regulated. People are going to indulge in whatever they want. Trans fats, booze, pills, sex, violence, etc. Making drugs illegal has never worked, and each time a government legalizes or even quasi-legalizes a drug, its related treatment goes up and its related crime, use, abuse, and addiction goes down. Drug cartels turn inner-city streets into war zones, make billions of dollars, and kill thousands of people. They thrive on the illegality of this commodity. The more illegal it is, the more in demand it becomes. Politicians exploit drug issues, making the drug war a quixotic mission. They create a public impression that drug war policies are vital to our safety and survival. Both the drug cartels and the political players are in an all too similar business. They both profit from the drug business. Without quixotic quests, politicians are at risk of becoming anonymous, which is political suicide. Without anti-drug forces to combat with, drug cartels would not have a highly sought after and highly in demand commodity. The relationship is symbiotic. One sustains the other, and both are driven by a profit agenda. At the time of this writing, marijuana is quasi-legal in California, which is where I live. If you have a doctor-issued prescription, you can buy pot at a public dispensary. Marijuana dispensaries are local and legal businesses, licensed and taxed for government revenue, the same as any retail establishment. Quasi-legal means the state government accepts those businesses as legal, but the federal government does not. These dispensaries can be, and occasionally are, raided and shut down, with their inventory and revenue confiscated by federal agents. 21 states have legalized medical marijuana, and 4 have legalized medicinal and recreational uses of marijuana, a real milestone in the war on drugs. The feds can still bust them, but have outwardly confessed that if cannabis consumers and businesses are compliant with their local state laws, the feds have no intention of intervening. State revenue and employment has gone up in these states, and zero crime or drug use increase has been recorded. In other words, the same people who were doing it are still doing it, except now the state gets a piece of the revenue. This is also a symbiotic relationship, a good one. Colorado made $2 million in state revenue taxes from cannabis sales in the very first month, and Washington is expected to gain $51 million in its first year, and these are conservative estimates. This will make a massive impact on the illegal marijuana industry, forcing many mom and pop sellers and high school dealers out of business. Marijuana cartels in those states are soon to be irrelevant. Pacific Northwest cannabis sales regulations. Purchase quantities are limited to 1 ounce per day. That's a lot. Cannot toke in public. Cannot drive under the influence. Must be 21 to buy or possess. There are more regulations, and they will continue to evolve as these states begin to see the defects in the specific law. Drug bias. The illegality of some drugs and the legality of others is too arbitrary. Narcotics will always be dangerous and justifiably discouraged. I am not suggesting that hard narcotics should be legal simply so we all have the right to choose to take them. I'm suggesting they should be legalized and strictly regulated simply because the alternative is an abject failure and has never reduced drug abuse at all. If illegalization was even a remotely workable concept, it should be kept, but the math doesn't add up. Legalized regulation needs to be more than requiring a simple note from your doctor to acquire dope. And these pot prescribing doctors are rarely more scrutinizing than the Oxy Express doctors. Quantity and frequency should be regulated. A national database that is interconnected should be established so you can't go from one clinic to another buying over the allotted limit, what addicts refer to as doctor shopping. This should apply not just for pot, but for alcohol and potentially abusable medicines too. All drugs should be in the database and be monitored and regulated. I get it. You have a right to make your own choices in life, no matter how dumb some of these choices might be. However, when an alcoholic is afraid to shop for weekly groceries because of the tempting aisles of liquor next to the meat and cheese aisles, we could do something to help reduce his exposure, temptation, and vulnerability to his tendencies. Many states sell groceries in one store and alcohol in a specifically sanctioned store, called a liquor store. What a concept. My son once asked me what the incentive was for not doing drugs and partying. Everyone else did it, and here he was trying to be good, but he wondered, where's the payoff? For giving up something that looks exciting and socially acceptable. Simply watching everyone else party while abstaining and being curious himself was frustrating to him. I replied that being sober was its own reward, but I knew a 17-year-old didn't want to hear that crap. I explained it anyway. Being clean and sober will give you advantages in life that others might not have. But he's not stupid. He knows celebrities get out of DUI charges, top athletes crash cars while drunk and still make millions, and his own partying schoolmates have all the same advantages he has. Their parents still buy them cars, give them money, spoil them, etc. So what's the incentive not to party? Sacrificing a fun lifestyle that everyone else seems to be enjoying seems senseless. There's currently no simple answer to that. But what if we set up an incentive program instead of a punishment program? Instead of punishing every kid and adult who's caught getting loaded, firing them from work, expelled, or fined for possession, we give incentives for not getting loaded. Want a 25% discount on auto insurance, or toward buying a car, or going to college? Take regular drug screens to show you don't get loaded. Worried about the revenue it would cost to test everyone? Don't worry. They will more than generate what it costs for testing and the discounts they received. The answer I gave to my son as to why he should forgo the party life was simple, though not very glamorous. It's the right thing to do. It's natural and beautiful to be free, and when we are involved with drugs, we are never free. He knows, more than most kids because of my background, how drugs can steal from you. Consciousness and independence and true freedom are invaluable, so don't waste them. Whether drugs are made legal, quasi-legal, or illegal, there will always be a demand for them on the black market, as demand will always be higher than supply. The current system is not working, and we have little to lose in trying legalization, learning as we go to make it better and more efficient. Maybe we can't stop the destruction caused by drugs, but maybe we can certainly reduce the occurrences of drug cartels and gangs and simultaneously increase tax revenues by putting the majority of the non-narcotic drugs under the regulation of the people. We may not even put a dent in the volume of drug abuse or addiction, but we would certainly deal a heavy, impactful blow to the criminal market, and that's something. U.S. marijuana and alcohol legalization confirms this. Heroin legalization in Switzerland is encouraged too. In 2008, heroin was quasi-legalized by the Swiss. Regulations include the following: registration with a government-funded, regulated facility, administration of drugs by doctors only and within a sanctioned facility, drug quantity is minimal, enough to prevent withdrawals, and regulated. It is not a perfect program, but it's hard to argue with the overall results. Heroin use, crime, and related medical issues such as overdoses and IV-related HIV have become reduced significantly. People are going to eat junk food, have reckless sex, and use drugs, regardless of legality and morality. We don't have to join them just because we can't stop them, but we can try to minimize the dangers and provide boundaries and some sensibility to an insensible issue. Drugs.net. Drugs are now available online, and everyone should know of this. I do not include this detailed section to empower or encourage drug acquisition, and several editors suggest I remove this section from the book, which I was almost persuaded to do. However, I have chosen to be true to the spirit and honesty of this book, risking criticism and attack from conventional society to give you, as promised, all relevant drug information. What you do with the information provided is up to you, but RSs, recovery supporters, and parents need to know what their loved ones have access to and how. If a concerned parent had no idea that pornography and pedophiles were on the internet, how would they protect their kids from them? I am fairly convinced that the majority will feel this section was irresponsible to provide, but the minority who feel it is useful and vital information will appreciate it. I'd rather sell fewer books that are thorough and honest than millions that are commercially edited for sales over integrity. The Silk Road. In February of 2011, a website called The Silk Road was created by a young man named Ross Ulbricht. He provided a place of trade for materials and merchandise that are illegal in most places or not accessible in common society or marketplaces, such as bootleg music or movies. Drugs quickly became a major feature on the marketplace, lots of them in every kind. The site was established on the darknet, which can only be accessed by a Tor browser. Tor stands for the Onion Router. It is not possible to access darknet sites with conventional internet browsers like Google or Explorer. What was on the Silk Road? Paraphernalia like bongs, pipes, and syringes. Personal quantities of marijuana, ounces of marijuana, and even pounds of marijuana. Prescription meds like benzos, opiates, and antibiotics. Narcotics like cocaine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, MDMA, and MDA. Heroin, both black tar and China white, peyote, absinthe, DXM, LSD, and quite literally any drug I could name after searching my own personal mental library, which is fairly extensive. The quality of these drugs was mostly high-grade, Regent-tested, and some of the most potent and pure available, which would normally require traveling to an exotic locale and establishing a lot of very trusted and potentially dangerous contacts. No, I'm not exaggerating the drug merchandise on the Silk Road. Unlucky 13. In October 2013, the FBI finally shut down the Silk Road. On February 4, 2015, Mr. Albright was found guilty on 7 counts, including drug trafficking, continuing a criminal enterprise, hacking, money laundering, and fraud with identification documents. He was sentenced to life in prison on May 29, 2015. It is likely that drugs and other contraband market sites are forthcoming. The Silk Road was resurrected by some of the original founders, and other similar darknet sites and marketplaces already exist. The Silk Road Marketplace is the genesis of a trend. The profit is far too lucrative for this potential to be ignored, and we must be aware to protect ourselves, our kids, and loved ones. Within 30 months, there were 1.2 million transactions on the Silk Road. Silk Road revenues have been estimated at $1.2 billion and $80 million in commissions. The international market had vendors and customers from the United States, the United Kingdom, Sweden, Australia, Germany, Canada, France, Russia, Italy, the Netherlands, and others. It is vital to be aware of these burgeoning options to protect ourselves and the ones we love. Ignorance is not bliss, it is dangerous. The Project Addiction website has a detailed account of how I established an account on the Silk Road website, what I purchased, and how. My interaction with the Darknet and Silk Road was done as research for this book. It is not made public to teach people how to access Darknet drugs or contraband. It is provided to educate towards interference. Quixotic politics. The war on drugs is a political pivot point, often used to gain media attention for publicity. America's view on drugs is hypocritical at best and downright destructive at worst. Shady pain management groups and doctors make big bucks on the Oxy Express. The Oxy Express is an almost totally unregulated area of Florida, where a 12-year-old MRI and some cash will get you whatever size bag of prescription pills you can afford and carry. People come from at least 5 different states to take advantage of the easy opiate pill access. Fed agents pick off little nobody drug addicts outside the clinics and arrest them for possession, while the shady clinic doctors go home to big homes and count their money. The doctors are degree-holding members of society, right? They aren't dope fiends, they're money fiends. These doctors prey on and exploit the vulnerable, but in a legal way. Florida's steps to intervene, curb, or stop the Oxy Express is superficial at best, as the state's government is aware that massive tax revenue from these clinics would be lost if they cut off Oxy Express traffic. Shutting down the Oxy Express is not complicated. If it were truly a sincere agenda, Florida would create legislation requiring these script-writing doctors to participate in a state monitoring database. The database would quickly reveal when a script-seeking addict was last written a script by another clinic, and this would disqualify them from receiving a new one. Any doctor who violated these script restrictions would be sanctioned and fined, and his or her license would be reviewed, revoked, or suspended. A nationwide prescription database should absolutely be in place and a requirement for anyone to open a clinic. As a mere drug counselor, I'm required to prove I have 70 hours of continuing education just to keep my license valid each year. Yet these high-earning doctors can run these shady practices with almost no scrutiny or monitoring. The technology works if you want it to. Too many family members or friends of politicians are in the medical field, so politicians are focused on the laws that hit the little guy while ignoring the lawmaking that would hold the pros accountable. A college degree in America is a lot like having a membership card to an elite class, the 1%. God forbid we come down heavy on a profitable industry like the medical field and lessen the tax revenue they contribute by even a few dollars. It is hard to believe that modern politicians care much about anything more than keeping or gaining the job at stake, driven by ego, pride, and misguided personal issues. There is little objectivity in modern politics. While I can accept that many politicians were initially motivated by idealistic mentalities, it doesn't take long, in any field, to have idealism tarnished. Eventually, someone goes along to get along, long enough that they are inevitably a mere semblance of those initial ideals. Nearly all political issues are important and need a system and agents who work for and toward them. But the system is deeply flawed and cannot be trusted. When it comes to voting decisions, do your own research. Don't buy what you're told on the surface. Would you buy a car a salesperson told you was the best, or would you do a little research before you gave such a large sum of money over or just on this stranger's word? Drug legality and treatment is a huge issue that affects us all globally. I'm assuming, since you're reading this, it is also a personal issue. It might not be as personally consequential to you as purchasing a car you'll be driving every day, but it is a humongous one that affects us as a planet, as nations, as communities, as friends, and as family members. We need to have informed opinions on all social issues. Be a skeptic on politics, on laws, on society, and on me in this book too. Do not accept what I say as gospel. Think it over. Contrast it against other things you know and feel, and then study or read other sources. Confirm everything you are exposed to. Drug use, abuse, and addiction is a behavioral and medical issue, far more than a criminal one. As a counselor, that's what I have built. A personal, professional database that every client, friend, family member, acquaintance, and personal experience is a piece of. All of that data is compared, analyzed, and contrasted to all other pieces until a composite whole is arrived at. In any given moment, I may have much certainty, but I still need to be open to being proved wrong. Adding new info and insights and more data. It's an open file. The issue of drugs is far too destructive for us to be anything less than open to more info, insights, and views. There's too much suffering to not have at least a feeling, if not a formed opinion on it. The Silk Road was an inevitable symptom of a zealously regulated world. Something like it will happen again, and when it does, law enforcement agencies will justify their jobs and budgets, and politicians will have another rallying point when they go after it, instead of the real problem, a global culture centered around a religion of superficial materialism and pleasure. Until we, as a global culture, as a family, or as a single person, you, put a higher value on bigger picture ideals such as spirit, peace, love, compassion, and easing suffering, rather than our own ease of comfort, pleasure, luxury, and status, we will have these destructive maladies.